Now that we've spoken about romance, let's take a look at family communication. In family communication, we want to define what a family is. Look at the characteristics that go into that definition, the types of families that are often thought of, family stories and their importance, communication dimensions within families, family of origin versus family of choice, maintaining families, family tensions. As we mentioned before, in all relationships there's some form of tension, and that includes families, which we hear about oftentimes on popular media such as movies. And then last, let's finish up with toxic families. Webster's gives us a broad definition of family, especially because this definition of family is expanding to incorporate more people. So Webster says a family is a group consisting of parents and children living together in a household. These are the people you know. These are the people that raised you. They share their culture with you. They're part of your inner sphere of influence, especially before you reach adolescence. And they gave you your culture. They gave you all the different aspects of them are contributed to you in some way or another. What it doesn't necessarily throw in there is biology and genetics. That used to be a big part of how we define family, is genetics. What do you think of that? Is that an important thing? Is there things that are more important than genetics? Perhaps it is more important to have someone that you trust and believe in and that's there for you, that may not necessarily be part of a genetic code. Characteristics of family. Families include an identity. There's a family identity. And we oftentimes hear this, that's not how my family does it, or my family believes in this approach. Families use communication to find boundaries. In some families, there are no boundaries between communication. And in other ones, there's almost a hierarchy where you have to go first, you talk to mom, and then you talk to dad, or you talk to dad, and then you talk to mom. And this even transfers to outside people, friends that come over to the house, things of that variety. Oh, no one talks to grandpa before his coffee, type of rule. Families share emotional bonds because we've experienced so much with them. We've learned from them, we've grown with them, we've been through trial and happiness with them. For that reason, there's a very strong emotional history. Families share a history. In other words, yeah, my great-grandparents came from Ireland, and before that they were part of Wales or in England. And so there's a kind of a lineage, a backstory to families that helps create our identity as well. Oftentimes families share genetic material. If you listen to me and my son and my brother, we all have the same voice. It's odd, same nose, weird things of that variety. So there are genetics oftentimes involved in family, especially family of origin, but not always. Family members are constantly juggling multiple and sometimes competing roles. In other words, we've all heard the story of, hey, I can beat up my little brother, but you can't because he's my brother. So in some ways, you're saying, okay, as part of a brotherly connection, roughhousing is acceptable. But when someone else roughhouses with your brother, well, then you become a protector of him. And so that is a competing role. You can also see that in parenting, where at one point you have to be the disciplinarian, but at the same time, you're trying to give your child the best and help them explore the world. So there can be competing roles. Types of family. The nuclear family used to really define families. We looked at it as the perfect model in the 1950s and before then. And that was the wife, the husband, and the children. And it was often said that the children were like 2.5 children was the average. But families have morphed and changed over time. And the nuclear family might now consist of a wife, a husband, and a husband. It can actually be diversified. Extended family, that would be your grandparents, your cousins, your uncles. They're people that are related to you through genetics often, and those are the roles that they play, and they're kind of extended. They were around during your developmental years, but oftentimes not directly involved. Step families. In the 1970s and 80s, divorce rates went through the roof. And at that time, we really started to explore and look at step families, many blended families. And that's why you see it so often in pulp culture of the time, from the Brady Bunch all the way through the sitcoms you saw in the 80s. It usually was a divorced husband marrying a divorced wife, and then they start a new family and the struggles within that. So there's uniqueness within that. Cohabitating couples. This is where they don't necessarily have that final step as we saw on NAPS, where the final legal declaration of family or marriage comes about. Instead, they cohabitate. They live together and they share the responsibilities like a family. They just don't have that legal bond. Now, many successful families come from that. Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell have been together forever, since I think the 60s or maybe early 70s. They never got married. They're a cohabitating couple, and as a couple, they did just fine raising their family. Single family or single parent families, we see this. This occurs because of a divorce. It might be a transitional period, or it might be that works out best for the family, where there's one parent and then the children. And that'd be the single family. And the voluntary kin family is when there's an absence or someone you come across just takes up that role of mom or dad or grandpa. And they kind of voluntarily move into those roles. And so they still fit in within the Webster's definition, but it's more of a voluntary situation. Family stories. These are fun. Oftentimes we hear family stories that date back many generations, and it includes stories of courtship, of birth. Someone was born and they had to travel clear through the snow and the blizzard to get to the hospital by covered wagon. Crazy stories of that variety. Survival, during the potato famine in Ireland, my family struggled to survive, so they came to the United States, and that's how they managed to survive that. Telling family stories is a bonding experience, such as what we've just talked about a little bit with Ernest Borman, and how sharing stories bonds people. That's what family stories do. Now I'm going to step away for a moment, and hopefully on the next slide you'll have a guest speaker that's here to talk about a family story from my family.
Hi, my name is Laura McCauley. I'm Brad McCauley's better half, and he asked me to tell you a little bit about our love story and how we met. So we met about 1,000,000 years ago. Oh wait, our love story. No, 30 years ago this October. On Halloween, actually. We're pretty cool. Anyway, I had just turned 22, and it was in March, and we would always go to this little 3-2 bar that was in Brighton. It was called the Class Act. So a 3-2 bar is really different than 6.0 bar. So 3-2 bar was from 18 to 21. So anybody that was 18 to 21 could go in and drink 3-2 beer. So we would go there all the time. I wasn't a drinker, but we would go there all the time to hang out, meet with friends, and dance. So my friends were like, let's go. And I was so tired. We had just been there all night, Friday night with my party. And so here it is, Saturday at 6 o'clock. We gotta go. And so I finally did it. And I was like, fine, I'll go. Right? So we went to Brighton, and we went to the Class Act, and we went in, and my friends and I were all sitting in the back corner. So the back corner is where the pool tables are, the dart boards. Luckily, I never got hit with a dart. And Then on the other side of the room was a big dance floor. So in the middle of the actual place was this square bar. And so we were sitting in the back playing pool, laughing, and all of a sudden it was just so quick that a big smoke cloud came and went around this man, and that's all I could see was this man. I heard nothing. I didn't see anything other than this smoke cloud and Brad. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, my heart's a pounding. I don't hear anything. I don't see anything except for him. So I turn to my friends and I look at him and I look back and it's only him. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I look at them again and I say, hey, do you see that guy at the bar? And they're like, yeah. I said, that's the man. That's the man I'm going to marry. Well, the entire corner of this bar that I'm with, they erupt in laughter. So it made me second guess myself, like, well, what is happening? And I'm like, why? Why can't I go get this guy? Why can't I go talk to this guy? And they were like, first of all, he's wearing cowboy boots. Second of all, he has a military haircut, Laura. Come on. And you got to think of this. This is right after the 80s. We're still in the big hair, big makeup, bringing it on. And so for me, I was a virgin. I'd never been with another person. And this whole thing where it felt like the stars aligned and everything was there, I was like, I'm going for it. So I stood up, fixed my hair a little bit, unbuttoned a couple little buttons here, and I walked right on over there. Well, let's just say it might have been a little R-rated. I'm not really sure. Something about Jello, bathtub, bedroom. I don't know. But the next thing I know is we start this whirlwind romance. So for an entire week, from Saturday to Saturday, we did nothing but talk, hang out, every minute of every day. The next thing I know, the next Saturday comes, we've been one entire week together. And we're driving up to Greeley because Brad is going to start at UNC. And I'm so excited for him. He's asked me to come help him look at an apartment. And so we're driving up there and he says, yeah, it's going to be great. I'll go to UNC and it'll be wonderful. And we can just do all this stuff together. And I said, well, you know, you're getting an apartment for yourself. And he goes, no, I thought we were doing this together. So we moved in together 1 week after we met. And we've been together ever since for 30 years. And I just want you to know that love finds a way. As long as you're honest with yourself and honest with others, you'll meet people. You'll learn about people. You'll fall in love with people. And that's the best part about life. Yeah, some things you have to wait to happen. Yeah, sometimes it seems like, I need this to be over with. But as long as you're honest with yourself and honest with others, things will go the right way. For Brad and myself, I truly believe that the stars aligned, and that's how we met. He is the yin to my yang. He is the sunrise in the morning and the sunset at night. He means everything to us. He's made me a better person, a better woman, a better mother, a better everything. And every day that I get up, I remind myself, I need to be better today than I was yesterday. And as long as you have that in your world and in your heart, you can change everything. You can make the world a better place. And that's what we need. Our family has grown in 30 years. We have 2 wonderful sons. I have a wonderful son-in-law. We have extended family and people everywhere that are touched by our lives. Brad is a wonderful professor and human being, and I am so glad you're in his class. I'm so happy that I was able to tell you this story, and I hope you remember that you can do anything you want, anything, as long as you're honest with yourself and honest with others. The world is your oyster. I wish you all the most luck and wonderful life you'll ever have. And thank you again for learning and listening to Brad. He's one amazing guy. Have a great day.
And that is a family story. It is true, my wife is definitely my better half. I am very fortunate. And I'm glad that she was willing to step in here and share that story with you, because I can't quite capture it the way she does. And I am very gracious and very glad that she was able to come down here and share that with you. The elements you saw in the story are important because when future generations look at this story as a family story, they will see there are values in it. They will see that there is an approach to life. There's cultural aspects of it. And it is also kind of capsulated in that period of time of a beginning of a relationship when everything is truly magical. And they can then look at it and say, yeah, this is something I want to take forward in my life. So family stories become an important narrative for the family in bonding, as well as for future generations to understand where they came from. Before I close out this slide, that's a picture from our second date that we had up at Estes Park. It's been a wonderful experience. And now let's get back to the lesson. Communication dimensions within a family. Family communication pattern theory is used to describe family norms for how topics are discussed. There are rules, there are guidelines. Can be thought of as a relationship between three things: the parent, the child, and the topic. Now, within a family, these can vary from parent to parent, sibling to sibling. It is not just this is how the parent does it. Some cases it is, but not in all cases. There's the consensual communication. This has high amounts of both conformity and social concept. It is a family problem solving towards agreement. In other words, it's oftentimes based on the parents' beliefs. They're working towards a consensus. And so what they want to do is find something that works for everyone. But in the end, the judges are the parents or that parental role. Protective communication. Now, this is where there's a low amount of conversation. It's kind of, this is how things are going to occur. We're going to avoid conflict, and to avoid conflict, I'm going to use authority, and judgment has the parent to say, this is how we're going to talk about this topic. Pluralistic is low amounts of conformity and communication combination of high amounts of conversation oriented towards communication. The pluralistic one is where there's not so many formal roles, but the sharing of information is high. So you're really trying to say, well, this is how I feel about a subject. It's like when we were talking about pluralism in the past, how we're trying to take perspectives and share information. And so it doesn't matter if you're talking to your mom or your dad, you're still free to talk about it. Meanwhile, in some of the other models, you might talk to mom about it because mom, that's her ballpark. Or if I'm going to talk about the birds and the bees, I go to dad because I'm the son and I'm going to talk to my dad about it. And so it stays in type of role. Now, laissez-faire communication sounds kind of cool with a croissant and some coffee. Unfortunately, it's really not a productive form of communication where there is no interaction. It's just kind of like, well, say what you say, and oftentimes it can be confrontational. And oftentimes people in a family of this variety gets a lot of their information and communication about aspects of growing up from peers versus family. Once again, as we saw before, you can be in many of these categories and it can be changed from parent to parent. So if you look at this diagram, you don't have to be on one point or the other, one of the 4 points. Instead, you can be kind of somewhere in that, almost a circle within the dimensions of communication, and it can change over time. You might have more protective type of communication early in life, but then once after you become an adult, it becomes more pluralistic. Because roles do change within family, so does our communication styles. Family of origin versus family of choice. Family of origin is the family we are born into. Oftentimes we share genetics with that individual. In a case of family of origin versus adoption, you don't share genetics, but they were the family that you came into, and that is your family of origin. Family of choice. This is where that romantic chapter leads to, is your family of choice. You choose who you're going to be with. You choose who your wife or your spouse is going to be. We didn't choose who our parents are going to be, but in family of choice, we choose that. And this includes voluntary kin families, where maybe someone steps into another role, such as of the grandparent or uncle, aunt type of thing. Again, what we noticed early on when we were talking about romantic relationships or keeping relationships together, there are key strategies for maintaining it. If you're positive about your family, whether that be family of origin or family of choice, it is going to enhance the ability to stay together. If you're constantly negative about it, you're going to withdraw from it, they're going to withdraw from it. Assurances. Being there is one of the big things when you can depend upon the person, because they start off in that close sphere of influence for you. So if you know you can go talk to them when things are bad, that helps out. Self-disclosure. Vulnerability is very important in communication, because by showing that we're vulnerable and that we're able to disclose information, it bonds us closer together. That goes back to our onion way back in, I think, chapter 2, where once you start peeling back that onion, the more layers the social penetration gets, the more vulnerable you are, but yet the closer you become to that person that you're sharing with. Now, there are different dialects, and this changes over time. You have balancing, where you're trying to balance your autonomy with your connection. And when you're young, that balance, as you can see on the graph here, is way leaning towards connection, because you depend upon them. You can't drive a car, you can't make food. Matter of fact, you could still be learning to walk at that time. So you are very dependent. So you don't have a lot of autonomy within the relationship at that time. It grows though and changes. As you become an adolescent, you need more independence in order to reach that adult life. So your bubble gets a little bit bigger. And your openness and protection changes as well. When we're kids, we just say everything to our parents. When we're teenagers, we shut them down. We stop listening. We stop communicating. So our openness becomes less and become more protective of the information we have. Communication privacy management theory argues that disclosure is the process by which we give or receive private information. Private information is what we reveal, is that vulnerability that we talked about. And because of this, we can become closer to a parent, one parent over there, based on how we feel our ability to share with them is. We might share with one sibling because we feel they'll keep it private, but not with another one because we don't feel they're going to guard our secrets. So you see it changes over time. As an adult, we have a big boundary. We really make the choice of keeping that family dialect going or of letting it fall aside. As we get older, though, we become once again more vulnerable, and because we're more vulnerable, we have to depend and share more information in order to protect ourselves, which means we have less privacy, we have more of a need for connection, and that protective layer that we had put on ourselves as adults, where this is my life, stay out of it, we change that to where I need your help to prolong my life. So we start out with kind of that small bubble, and it grows and grows, and then it shrinks back down. Family relationship challenges. Step family transitions can be very difficult. It's nice when they show it on TV. It seems to all work out in a comedy in about 30 minutes, blocks, and everything's fine. However, in real life, You have to go slow when you're trying to transition a family together. You have to practice family maintenance. In other words, you have to keep in mind, you have to be reflective, like we've talked about throughout. Knowing ourselves is an important aspect of how we communicate. And in a step family situation, that becomes very important because we have to kind of take the perspective of them and how they view us and how we are trying to portray ourselves within that family dynamics. You create new family rituals. If you try to hang on to a past family ritual, it might be tainted by you're trying to take over that person's role, or you're trying to make us forget them, and that creates friction. Avoid triangulation. As we talked about in toxic relationships before, triangulation is where two people gang up against a third. And you can see this in step families where two children gang up against the new spouse. Or it could be the new spouse and the parent gang up on the child. So triangulation is bad. Being patient is important. Parental favoritism. Now, we all like to say we love everyone equally. However, some behaviors we like more than others. So you can love everyone equally, but you may not like how someone's behaving at a particular time, and it might come off as favoritism. So parental favoritism can be a problem or one of the challenges we see. You know, it's easy to say, oh, well, because Timmy gets all the A's, that's your favorite child, and I get C's, so I'm not your favorite child. However, you might appreciate children in different ways, and you have to treat them as unique individuals. And interparental conflict. We hear about people that stay together for the children when they're actually grown to hate each other in the relationship. That oftentimes does not actually help the child, and so interparental conflict needs to be resolved in order not to have that bleed into the family dynamics. Heading into break, let's go ahead and think about a family story you would like to share related to family courtship, a birth, a story of survival of the family, and anything you really would like to tell a family story about.